All in favor? Yes. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, before we start going through the main action items on today's agenda, since we have new committee members, I'll just ask Brad to quickly orient us on the purpose of the committee and what we're supposed to get done. Brad?
Okay. Thank you, Jer. So welcome to our two new members to the Finance Committee. We have a third committee member, Robert Walker from Dunedin, who unfortunately is not here, but he is also new to the committee. So we've got quite a bit of turnover on the PSA Finance Committee. The committees, this Finance Committee and the Planning Committee, all the committees of PSTA, their purpose is just to recommend things to the PSTA board. Every item that you see when you're downstairs voting has been through a committee, either the Finance Committee, the Planning Committee, or really the Legislative Committee are the only committees that make recommendations. The Planning Committee, that which meets right after this, that looks at two in the future items, plans, the budget, studies, things like that. That's the purpose of the Planning Committee. This Finance Committee that we're meeting now with sort of takes on actions of the here and now, how PSDA does its business. And that's why you're going to see a lot of contracts. Contracts come before this committee largely, and that is basically what you'll see in the packet is action items for contract approvals. Basically, you're monitoring the procurement that we did to the company that we're hiring, and the dollar amount. You'll see there's a write-up on every action item that has a box that has the recommendation for the Finance Committee members to consider. And so again, you'll see that those are all referenced as you're just recommending this item to the PSTA board. You're not taking any action yourself. You're just voting to recommend it or not, or make adjustments there. What we try to do is on every action item is have two key items, especially for contracts, a maximum number of years that the contract can run, which usually is 5. It's usually like a 3-year base plus 2 option years kind of contract. Those are almost all of them. And then a not to exceed amount, a dollar amount that doesn't mean we're going to actually use that company and spend all that money, but it's just if it goes over that amount or if it comes to that, then we have to come back to the board for approval. So that's like the maximum amount it could be. So I kind of wanted to just give that sort of orientation. You'll see Bonnie's going to be up first talking about our mobility, our new Airport Express service and contracts there. And then, so your item is to certainly ask any questions you have, and then make a recommendation to the PSA board, which will actually usually is going to be next week, but with Thanksgiving, it's the following week. This one.
Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Either you guys have any questions for Brad before we move on?
So just to clarify, when we would be voting on action items here, what we're actually voting on is to recommend to the board that something be
Right.
approved or denied.
We don't make the final approval.
Right.
The board does.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. As Brad mentioned, first up is Bonnie Epstein on the airport shuttle contracts. Bonnie?
Okay. Good morning, Finance Committee. My name is Bonnie Epstein. I'm the Director of Mobility Services, and like Brad said, today I'm going to tell you about a new service that we plan to launch next year that will go between the St. Pete Clearwater Airport and Clearwater Beach. So first I want to give a little bit of background about this new service. During the spring of this year, we had a bunch of different board workshops. And one of the priorities that the board members expressed during these workshops was to have more services oriented towards tourists. Board members Brian Scott and David Albritton and a few other board members really advocated for a service between the airport and the beaches. And really all board members at these workshops were interested in increasing revenues for PSTA. So really, with these priorities in mind, the board approved a $2.2 million for this new airport service in our fiscal year 25 adopted budget. So me, along with our planning team and mobility team, have really looked at different ways that we could provide the service. And really the goal is to keep costs down and provide the service in the most efficient way possible. So our current plan for service delivery is to use our existing PSTA access contractors of Transdev and Bay Area Metro. So these contractors, they already are doing service for us. They have local operations offices, and they're familiar with how to deliver service to PSTA. Using these contractors, we can count the ridership in our formula funding, and if we get grant funding in the future, we can use it on these providers for operations. These contractors, Transdev and Bay Area Metro, they're currently using the SPARE software. SPARE is a software that we use for our PSC Access and MOD contractors. That's what we use for routing, scheduling, dispatching. This is also the software that powers our PSCA Access app that the Access and MOD riders use to book, view, cancel all of their trips. Using the SPARE software for this new service will allow us to have rides booked on demand, so customers can book, at baggage claim when they see the vehicle, or they can book the ride in advance. We really think that using the SPARE software will allow us to have scalability and flexibility for the service. So we'll be able to add vehicles in service during peak times like spring break, and then kind of scale back service when we see less demand. So again, we really want to provide a great service in the most efficient and low-cost way possible. So this service, again, will be able to be booked in advance and on demand. Riders can call in. They can also book rides kind of with using a QR code. So I know I have an example here of Uber, but we hope that riders can just, when they're at baggage claim or in the airport, see signs for this service, scan a QR code, and that would take them to a web page where they could just put in some basic information, name, phone number, when they want to where they want to get dropped off, and book the ride. We also hope to have a branded rider-facing app that riders could download and use to book their rides as well. Riders wouldn't have to wait more than 30 minutes for a ride to or from the airport from the time that they request the ride. So 30 minutes max for waiting. And the idea is riders would be able to go anywhere on Clearwater Beach, not just a hotel. They could get dropped off at an Airbnb, a restaurant, go right to the beach, but the start or end of the trip would have to be the airport. Moving forward, we're looking to get some new vehicles for Transdev, brand those vehicles, get them all set up. I hope they'll look kind of something like that airport shuttle with luggage racks, and then we'll be training our staff and the contractors on the new service and operations. So as Brad mentioned, this action item does have 3 parts. So the first action item, we'd like you to recommend approval for adding the Clearwater pilot service to the Transdev contract, our existing contract. The second action item is to recommend approval to add this new airport service to our existing contract with Bay Area Metro. And for both of those, we're not asking for any increase in funds. We'll just use the money that's already on those existing contracts. But our third action item is to add this airport service to our contract with SPARE, our existing contract, and have a contract increase to that contract of $150,000 to provide this service. Again, this service is budgeted for this fiscal year. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bonnie. Any questions, Matt?
I do, yeah. The contract increase for Spare Labs, is that because we're sort of maxed out on the number of rides we can use their software for?
No, so we're actually maxed out at our current contract limit. So the contract that we have with Spare is a very long contract, but each year has already been allocated. So to do this new service, we need to add additional funds.
Because it's a new route?
Because it's a new service. They're going to make a new platform, a new rider-facing app, a branded way of booking the service. So it is going to be some work.
Okay.
Yeah, this 150 is more like software development.
Right.
Only
Yeah, yes.
Module development, yeah.
Oh, I've got a couple more unless.
Yeah.
somebody-
Go
Okay.
ahead.
I think this is a great idea personally, and I want to see it succeed, and it seems like the success of this would depend heavily on potential riders knowing about it.
Yeah.
What do we have lined up in terms of advertising, marketing, education for riders who might be our potential target market?
Hi.
Hi.
I'm Anna Baird, Director of Communications and Marketing. I'm working very closely with Bonnie to develop a really robust branding, advertising strategy, the heart of which is really going to be we've been working directly with the airport to post advertising on baggage claim. They have some dynamic signage where we would be able to just say, ride to Clearwater Beach, X dollars, scan here, which to me as a traveler is, if I expected to pay $60 for an Uber and I see something that is anything less than that, I'm scanning that QR code. So yes, so that's going to be really the heart of the advertising strategy, is reaching those people directly where they are. The airport's also collaborating with us very closely on getting the word out about the service directly to their incoming travelers. So in addition, we are working on the destination end. Several of the hotels on Clearwater Beach are already UPass partners who are bought into the idea of PSTA, and they are very happy and willing to post signage as well. So in addition to all of the advertising at the airport, we'll have advertising at the destinations as well, and we'll do some additional awareness campaigns. So,
Yeah, social media, maybe Visit
Yes.
St. Pete Clearwater.
yeah, we have a good partnership with the Visit St. Pete Clearwater. We worked with them before, so we will definitely be working with them on this specifically.
What does it mean for a hotel to be a UPass partner? Does that mean they can
Absolutely.
give-
So our UPass program, basically, with the hotels specifically, they buy in on an annual agreement, so that both their employees and their guests can use our fixed route bus service. This service would not be part of the UPass agreement, but basically, because they've already demonstrated like, hey, we're willing to make this investment so our guests can enjoy the beach trolley free of charge just by showing their room key kind of thing, they're willing to work with us to get guests to those hotels and on those other services, so.
Yeah, I can see one advantage of this being obviously fewer cars at Clearwater Beach. That seems like one of the benefits, and so that would also be a benefit to the municipality of Clearwater. What kind of buy-in do we have from Clearwater? Do we need approval? Are we getting partnership resources from Clearwater? How does that work?
I mean, right now, I think we are working with the city of Clearwater, but we don't need any sort of approvals to just drop people off and pick them up on the beach. I think really where we're gonna capture new customers, like Amanda mentioned, is at the airport. We actually are going over there later today. So really, where can we put signage, having the vehicle picking up at the terminal, like we were talking about earlier, and then information at our UPass hotels. So even if you don't take the service to the hotel, maybe you see it while you're staying there and then you take it as a return.
Yeah.
Barbara?
Can this be included in the monthly ridership per route?
Oh, yeah, it will,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, once it launches.
Yeah, we're just here to approve, recommend approval.
Yeah,
for
I'm
these
just
items. I mean,
asking.
Yeah.
So.
And do we know what the cost is for the trip?
We have a proposal that maybe Bonnie's not totally a fan of, but we propose $8, $8 per person. More than our regular fare, but less than the $40-some Uber ride
Yeah.
average.
Any more questions?
one, do we know what it's gonna cost us per ride with these contractors?
It-
Or is it
Yeah.
not really broken out per ride that way?
It's not broken out per ride, so the way that we'll have it set up, I think our contractor Transdev is gonna be doing the majority of the rides, and the payment will look like how we're already billed for access, which is a fixed cost that'll include like the vehicles that we have for the service and the, bacon maintenance. And then we'll have a platform hour, so I think, we'll be as efficient as possible, so we'll put more platform hours out when we see more service and really work with the airport and their schedule so that when there's no flights incoming or outgoing from PIE, we'll have fewer platform hours. So we'll pay for when the drivers are out there, but only when they're out there.
Any more questions? Okay. Thank you. Do I have a motion to recommend approval of these contract amendments?
Move approval?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Bonnie.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Next up is James Bradford, Chief Operations Officer, who's going to outline our new 3-year labor agreement. James,
Good morning.
thank you.
My pleasure to be here today. As mentioned, James Bradford, Chief Operating Officer. I do want to welcome our new committee members, and I'm pleased to actually present this particular topic matter because it means we're done with another long contract negotiations, which we do about every 3 years. Before I get started, I just want to tell you what you should have in your packets in terms of information, because I'm going to go through a portion of this in my PowerPoint. You have my full PowerPoint in here, which kind of highlights some of the wages and working conditions and some of the other salient points that we negotiated through the last several months. You should have the updated labor agreement with our bus operators, CSRs, and maintenance. It's nearly 200 pages. If you get a chance to flip through that, you'll notice anything that's highlighted yellow or some of the changes that we made to the contract labor agreement. And then also I included an updated rate chart with all the individual rates that I'm going to go over here shortly. So I'm going to be seeking your approval and recommendation to the board today on a new 3-year labor agreement or union contract to the board. And there's 2 parts to this, but essentially what we did when we worked with SEIU was we went through those 200 pages and we updated, usually you update working conditions and wages and other things that have kind of stood out over those previous 3 years. Before I go through this, though, I do want to just recognize some of the folks. We spent hours and hours with each other in these virtual rooms. So I do want to recognize SEIU, the top officers in the back. We have Ken Elliott, Jose Santiago, and the chair of SEIU, Kevin Sablon, who we went back and forth with over the last several months. And I want to thank the PSEA team, our director of maintenance, Henry Kasich, our director of HR, Patricia Collins, our director of transportation, Greg Bracken, and then Debbie Leas, our CFO. Her team were instrumental. So it takes a lot of people, a lot of knowledge, a lot of folks kind of doing their parts to kind of arrive at this. So if approved, this new labor agreement would run through September 30th, 2027. The union voted last week, actually around this time last week, in favor of this new agreement by a count of 237 to 82, or nearly 74%, which is astounding on their part to get this done. And that vote took place last Wednesday, November 13th. I always ask them, hey, what's going on with the people who voted no? And I think you all always kind of tell me there's just people who are going to vote no matter what, just as kind of their idea or their contribution to try to make their officers go back to the table. But the overwhelming majority thought it was a good deal. Now, PSEA last came before the board on this issue because the contract runs 3 years. So we were last before the board in August of 2021. Your recommendation to the board, and then on December 4th when we have the board meeting, should they approve it, that represents the final step in full ratification. So part 1 ratification was what the union did, which is to go before their hundreds of members, and then part 2 would be the board itself. Just to give you a little background, SEIU is the bargaining chapter and unit for here at PSEA. There's many different transit unions. Ours is SEIU throughout the state of Florida. They represent tens of thousands of employees up and down the Florida coast. This particular labor agreement is for PSA's largest union. So we have two of them. We have two SEIU chapters. The smaller one is the supervisors, about 30 people. This one covers nearly 500 employees, bus operators, CSRs, and various maintenance personnel. And again, just to kind of give you a little background on this, I'm looking at my slides. Okay, I'm going to jump to this slide. We achieved this over several months. This is one of our longer ones. We normally do it in about, 8 to 12 sessions. We had a lot of topics, a lot of things have happened over the last 3 years that we really wanted to take our time to cover. We started in the summertime, and we just achieved full tentative agreement on Tuesday, October 29th. But it was good. We had 18 sessions. We had over 100 proposals that we needed to kind of go through and whittle down. And there was a little bit of back and forth, but at the end, I think it was amicable, and it worked out to be a good deal for both sides. When we get into this, just kind of an overarching highlight, when PSA goes into this, we don't usually seek a whole lot, right? We have our proposals on the table, but we're looking to clear up policy updates. We're looking to also make sure that safety is paramount, so if we need to increase our safety rules, we'll try to do that as well. And then anything else that is kind of has been an issue for administration, we try to straighten that out. SEIU, they have some of their items that are important to them, and uniform items and tool allowance, work rules. But of course, what their members want to know is, hey, what are our wages going to be over the next 3 years? And of course, we've had increases in rent and affordable housing, commuter cost and childcare and everything. So that's very important to their members, and the fact that they got that approved overwhelmingly speaks volumes. I think both sides want to be performance driven, so when we look at our work policies and attendance requirements and that type of thing, the one thing I'll tell you SEIU understands is that PSA has a budget. At the end of the day, we have to be fiscally responsible with our taxpayer dollars. We have to be able to meet our needs and stay within our budget, but of course they're going to press us to be as competitive as possible. Some of the resources that we use when we go into negotiations are, one of the things is something called a DASH report. And this is a report that tells me nationally what over nearly 200 to 230 other transit agencies that are similar and comparable are doing in terms of their wages, in terms of their additional packages like ASC certifications or longevity plans. So I get to see what Tennessee's doing, what California's doing, what New York is doing. So we'll kind of look at that to see where we are. And I do present that information to the union so they can kind of understand where we're coming from. We also look at the other Florida contracts here in the state. There's about 30 fixed route agencies in the state of Florida. We can kind of compare ourselves to them, benefit packages, wages, progression models, that type of thing. And of course, we look at our own historical data from the previous 3 years. Now, this is in your packet. These are some of the key issues that we went through in the round of bargaining. I'm happy to answer any questions on those. This next slide, though, I want to talk to you about. It's a precursor to the following slide. I want to let you know what I mean by top steps. So essentially, when you're hired here at PSTA, bus operator, CSR, or maintenance tech, you come in at an entry-level pay step. And this is true for a lot of transit agencies. So we have a max rate, which nearly 70% of all the bargaining employees are in. And you hear me say bargaining, that's any employee that's covered by the labor agreement. But so if a bus operator or a CSR comes in, they're going to come in at that minimum wage. So right now for bus operators, it's $18. And then the top wage right now is $29.43. So they have a built-in wage increase, which helps with our retention, quite frankly, every 12 months. So they go from step 1 to 12 months later, step 2, so on and so forth, till they reach the top step, which is step 5 after 48 months. So if you're fortunate enough to stay here after 4 years, and that's what a lot of folks want to do, and I think once they hit year 3, year 4, I think, Kevin, they're going to stick around to step 5, which is good for us, to try to reach that maximum money. With maintenance, they have 3 steps, so they can reach maximum money after about 24 months. So when you hear me say top step, that just means that these are employees that have been here a number of years where they've reached the top pay progression in their wage scale. So here's the breakdown of what we ended up agreeing on, or tentatively agreeing on between both sides. This year, we're going to offer all the bargaining employees a 3.5% increase, which with the final ratification would be effective in December for the top steps only. And again, I'll mention, because the other junior steps have a built-in wage increase already. In years 2 and 3, we would do a 3.75 increase for top steps only. And then in year 3, we would do what PSA really wants to do to help with recruiting and kind of getting new talent into the door, because it is kind of harder and harder to get new bus operators and especially new technicians and maintenance in, just because it's a field that we see not a lot of folks going into anymore. We want to increase the entry-level pay in year 3. So we would like to start bus operators at $20 an hour in FY27, technician 1s at $23.50, and bring CSRs up to $18. All of this is in line and within our budget, and certainly FY25, this new deal is within our current budget as well. Some of the other fiscal items, we're going to do a $500 signing pay to all nearly 500 bargaining employees as part of this deal. And that's almost comparable to what we would pay if we paid them retroactively to October 1st, which is when the new contract would have went into effect had we been done. But I tell you, it's cleaner for us. Julie, I think, and her payroll team thanked me, because what it would have been for your team is to go through 500 people, 2 months worth of pay, any overtime, person by person, and try to adjust the rates and figure it out. So it was just a cleaner way. Thank you, SAU, for agreeing to that. So we're just going to do the 500 pay in lieu of retro pay, essentially, is what's going on there. Some other items, if you have questions about longevity pay, we made it a richer plan. Sick time fund, uniform, and tool and shoe allowance are always popular items that you'll see in a lot of these labor agreements. And just some of the other items that you'll see that are in your packet, I'm happy to answer questions about. I do want to tell you who we like to compare ourselves against in Florida. I like to kind of do a top 10 to see where we are. I've picked these contracts out as being comparable to us in structure and working conditions and how they offer their benefits and how they offer their pay progression. So I picked out Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Tampa, Jacksonville, West Palm Beach, Miami, Sarasota, Daytona Beach, Gainesville, to see how we stack up. If you see the highlight, that number is the new max rate should this contract be ratified. And just so we had an apples-to-apples comparison, I took the liberty of going through the contracts of the other 9 and plugging in what their numbers would be in FY25. So I got to see, do you have a 3% increase? Do you have a 4% increase, Orlando? How much money do you have left? Just so we could kind of see where we shake out. A few years ago, PSA was actually number 1, but I gotta tell you, all these unions in Florida talk to each other, and they all try to outdo each other. With this new deal, PSTA still stays in the top 3 in terms of highest paid operators, at least out of this pack, or really in the state, because this top 10 are some of the highest paid bus operators in the state. So still very competitive there, as you can see, right above Tampa, hard across the bay. And that's a projection based on if they're able to ratify their contract, what their new rate would be. And then for the technicians, the PSA would be about number 4. So right now, if this pays about $31 and change, I think, Henry, the new rate would go up to $35.60, and that doesn't include their ASC certification program, which would actually enhance those wages even more. For PSA bus operators currently, the wage is $29.43, but it would go to $30.46. So that's it. There's a lot to dig through. Like I said, hours and hours of meetings over several months, and I wanted to condense this, but not to go too fast. So I'm going to stop it here and answer any questions you may have. But just to recap, so I'm here today seeking your approval and your recommendation to the board for a new 3-year wage, working conditions and wage progression labor agreement with SEIU. Again, if approved, it would start effectively after the board meeting for the month of December and run through September 30th, 2027, about 3 years. 3 years is about the norm for labor contracts. And there's also a state statute in Florida where labor contracts really can't extend or exceed 3 years. Frontline, again, this Frontline union for this contract agreement represents one of PSDA's two unions, but it's the largest one of nearly 500 people. The union ratified their part, 237.82 last week. And again, the wage increases that are set to begin in FY25 are within PSCA's projected budget. So if we're able to get board approval, or if you recommend it today, that will represent the full and final step in this contract ratification process. Let me stop it there and just take any questions you may have.
Thank you, James. This is a great presentation. Thank you for all the hard work of everybody involved in this contract. I mean,
Thank you.
74% approval says that a lot of hard work went into that. So
Absolutely.
Thank you. Any board members have a question for James? No?
Okay, if you don't mind, one, when you're comparing St. Petersburg, well, PSTA,
Mhm.
Pinellas County, to the other metro areas, what do we need to consider in terms of how we weight those categories? We're considering cost of living, for example, in each county.
Sure.
What other kind of factors? Because how do we? What's behind the scenes here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great question. You know, so obviously you're going to see big differences between if you're living in Gainesville versus West Palm Beach, for example, where the cost of living may be a lot higher. We particularly look at the contract and how they're structured, but we also do look at their revenue streams, right? We look at how each of these cities are kind of drawing down their revenue, whether it's property taxes. You know, for example, trying to keep pace, you know, with Fort Lauderdale, where they've been able to, you know, reach out for some sales tax money, and be able to have some other revenue streams, you know, and one of the things we talked about SAU, we're probably not going to be able to keep pace with some of these agencies that have multiple revenue streams coming into the agency. But we typically look at size, we look at contract layout, we do look at kind of their pay scales, we look at kind of their benefit package and things of that nature. Just to see, you know, and again, it's about as close as you can do. There's 30 fixed route agencies. The other 20 are either rural or kind of so far off that we didn't even kind of compare ourselves against them. I don't know that I answered your question fully, but
Yeah, that was interesting to think about the revenue sources for the different agencies. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I mean, each contract, each city's contract is a little bit different, but a lot of the pay provisions are, and benefits and health insurance and things like that are pretty consistent across.
Any more questions from the members?
No, sir.
Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to recommend approval of the union contract?
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, James.
thank you. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Next up is Henry Lukasik, the Director of Procurement. No, wait. That right?
Henry?
Yeah, that-
was referred to
Oh,
that several
is that
board
wrong?
meetings
Did I say
ago,
that
but
wrong?
unfortunately, that's not true. I am
Oh,
So he's gonna go over the
I didn't
Cummins
see
engine
it.
contract.
I am still the Director of Maintenance. Joining me is David Hensler, the Interim Procurement Director. Sorry, I do
David,
not have a
sorry.
PowerPoint for this. This is one of the contracts that the Finance Committee will kind of see, an example of ones that are routine for us. In this case, it is for a 2-year contract and 3 one-year options with Cummins, who manufactures all of the diesel engines that are in our bus fleet. Little background, most of the PSTA bus fleet, 200-plus buses, is manufactured by a company called Gillig. You'll hear that word from time to time. But the engines that go in a Gillig bus are made by Cummins. Right? This has been routine. I've been here for well over a decade. This is probably the second time we've come before this. And what this generally is for is that over the course of the lifespan of a PSTA bus, we generally run our buses 18 years and well over 1 million miles. So over that lifespan, we go through what are known as planned overhauls, engine replacement being one of them. And typically, we see anywhere between 2 to 3 engine replacements over the life of a particular vehicle. Obviously, with many years of data analytics that allows us to forecast what our needs are going out for a full 5 years. So in this case, over the full length of this contract, which will go out to 2029, we're looking at approximately 52 engine replacements, mostly for vehicles that are now aged 2010 on up to 2019. As you know, PSTA is currently receiving deliveries of new electric buses, and we have many more to go. But I would point out that even into 2029, 62% of the PSTA bus fleet will still have a diesel engine in it. That's why we're pre-planning these overhauls for that purpose. So that's a little bit of the background. In terms of procurement, obviously, as is standard, our PSTA purchasing department put out an invitation for bid for the specifications of the engine that we need. And they received two responses. However, one was deemed non-responsive. And I can let David talk quickly on why that was, and then we'll get into who we recommend the award go to.
Thank you, Henry. And committee members, yes, we did have one bid that was non-responsive from Jasper Engines. They did not complete and return the pricing schedule in its entirety, so they were deemed non-responsive, and they were informed.
Thank you. One of the specifications that's very important to us with the vehicles that we run here is that being a Cummins engine is that it be original equipment manufacturer certified. Obviously, in a bus, an engine plays a lot of different parts and impacts on all the different operating systems. So we wanted to make sure that the engine was obviously able to be warranted for 2 years and 200,000 miles. And that's why the recommendation is to award a 2-year base contract plus 3 option years, so total 5 years, usually a typically standard amount of time, to Cummins Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $2.5 million over 5 years. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Henry, appreciate that. Quick question, is this for the replacement of engines, specifically just engines, or engines and components as they need?
Our engines are remanufactured, so it is basically what I would refer to as running complete.
Okay, so it's not in addition to have money for whatever part of the engine needs, it's just for the actual replacement engines during that time.
Total recon engine.
So if my math's doing well, they're about 40,000 apiece.
You are correct.
Okay,
Yep.
You are correct.
46,000.
thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, if you don't mind. Do we aim to replace at a certain age or a certain mileage or a combination of the two?
Both, actually.
Yeah.
There used to be a term many years ago called a midlife overhaul of a bus. It's usually generally around 6 to 8 years. We look at it as mileage, and we typically schedule those in around 350,000 miles. That's generally the lifespan of what these components will get in today's vehicles.
Any other questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to recommend approval of this contract?
Debbie has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see
I don't
Debbie.
have a question, but I do want to give a shout out to Henry and all of the maintenance team, because the actual life pursuant to FTA is 12 years. Henry, when I first got here, we sat down and said we need to make these buses last longer, get over the hump of a huge amount of buses that came in at one time. And his team has made it now where our average life is 18 years with these overhauls. So that's really good, and we've got David Hensler here today for our new members. He's the interim director of procurement. And David, you had a little factoid this morning. Do you mind sharing it with the team?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. And committee members, what I wanted to share with you is how we arrived at the 5-year period for the contract. We didn't just pick a random number. That is actually an FTA requirement for rolling stock or rolling stock replacement, that the contract shouldn't exceed 5 years. So we wanted to share that with you, that it wasn't just an arbitrary number, although you will see even on our non-FTA funded contracts, we do tend to stick to a 5-year term. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just thought that might be interesting.
No, I appreciate it. On the note of interesting, last board meeting, Henry mentioned, come on down and take a look at the buses. So I took him up on that. He's probably not going to like it, I'm going to say it at the board meeting. I encourage all board members to go into that garage and spend some time with Henry on these buses, because it's really interesting. I mean, I'm kind of in that line of work, so it's more interesting to me than most people, I guess, but I still recommend you get in there and take a look at them. Gives you an idea what we're doing around here. So on that, do I have a motion to approve the approval of the contract?
Motion to approve.
All right, second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Welcome to the Finance Committee.
Okay, Vail Software, financial software support rather. Keisha Harris. Kessie, I'm sorry.
No, no problem. Okay, good morning, Finance Committee Chair and committee members. My name is Kessia Harris. I am the PSTA IT Director. I am here today to recommend the approval of a 3-year contract extension with our current Avail Technologies Inc., with our current vendor, Avail Technologies Inc., for the Enterprise Resource Planning System, also known as our Avail ERP system, in an amount not to exceed $214,000. Unfortunately, I do not have a PowerPoint today because of our current situation. However, the equipment is getting replaced in the next coming days. Mass transit agencies like PSTA use software platforms to manage and automate their core business processes across different departments. At PSTA, we use Avail as our backbone to allow the different departments to collaborate and to do our day-to-day business activities and for a data visibility. PSTA has been using Avail for over 20 years, and the software provides various modules used by the agency, including human resource, purchasing, maintenance, inventory control, and most importantly, our payroll. Avail Technologies is constantly upgrading and updating their system to get up to the times with technology trends. Would PSTA ever be interested in a new ERP system? Perhaps in the future. However, right now, we are working with Avail, and we would like to continue working with them for at least the next 3 years, because it does take quite a bit of time to start working with another agency for something like an ERP system, which takes time. It's a big undertaking. So the cost of the 3-year extension covers license, hosting, and support. In 2025 and 2026, you will notice that the cost is actually lower because we did have, with our previous contract, there was some savings on there, and our previous procurement director was able to negotiate to use those funds to pay for part of the first 2 years for 2025 and 2026. And then the clock basically resets in 2027, which is why you have the full term for hosting, licensing, and support. With that, I recommend the approval of a 3-year extension with Avail Technologies for the ERP system in an amount not to exceed $214,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Kessie. Does anybody have any questions for us? Okay. Hearing none, I have a motion to approve.
Move to approve.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much. Clearwater Transit Center project. This was going to be Abhishek coming up and telling us about the Clearwater Transit Center.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and
morning.
welcome to new board members to the Finance Committee. I'm Abhishek Dayal, and the Director of Project Management. And I'm here to talk about this very important project for the agency, including some action items for your consideration. The 2 action items are approval of a license agreement with CSX Transportation for an amount not to exceed $80,000, as well as a contract amendment with CDM Smith. They are our engineering firm that's doing the design for the Clearwater Transit Center project, for an amount not to exceed $400,000. So the Clearwater Transit Center project is going to be constructed to replace our existing Park Street Terminal, which is in downtown Clearwater. It's in North Pinellas County. It is located approximately 1,000 feet from our existing Park Street Terminal, and this is a map that shows where the original Park Street Terminal is versus where the Clearwater Transit Center is going to be constructed. It's going to be built on a parcel that's twice the size of our Park Street Terminal. We got that from the city of Clearwater. If some of you might remember, back in March of 2024, the city and PSTA did a land exchange where we provided the city our Park Street terminal site, and the city provided us the larger 1.96 acre site where we can build our new facility. Since then, we've actually been leasing the Park Street terminal site from the city so we can continue to operate our terminal with all our bus services. The city has been a great partner on this project. As you can see from the photo, this was from when we had that land exchange ceremony back in April. The whole city council showed up to lend their support for this project. And since then, we've been having some great conversations with staff, with their electeds, the city manager, on the design for this project, including the City Hall project that's right across the street from the project site on Franklin Street. In fact, on Friday, there is a groundbreaking for their City Hall project, and we'll certainly be there to lend our support since they're going to be our neighbors. We're also working with the city's planning department on the public plaza design, which is a requirement per the city's downtown development code. So we're working very extensively with their staff on that. And then finally, with their public works department, the city's public works department, we're looking to underground the power lines that run along South Myrtle Avenue. That'll bring resiliency to the project as well as to other adjacent projects by having all those lines undergrounded all along South Myrtle Avenue. A little bit about Park Street Terminal as to why we're doing this project. Park Street Terminal, as I noted, is a major transit center in North Pinellas County. So it's a key location where people can transfer between buses to connect downtown Clearwater as well as other destinations in North Pinellas County. This was built back in the 80s, so it was actually built to the 80s standards, which no longer is relevant for the services we operate today. Right now, this terminal has 8 bus bays, and it's served by 15 bus routes. So as you can imagine, half the buses have to park outside when those buses come into the terminal. So it is over capacity. We also have significant structural issues with this site. Our maintenance team does a fantastic job in making sure that it's safe for our drivers, our riders to use, but it is coming with annual maintenance cost every year. So that's why, for all those reasons, we are looking to build a new facility. I just wanted to also point out the roof clearance issues at the terminal. You can see here one of our newer buses is barely making it out of our older facility. So that's why we're looking to build a bigger facility that can meet our current fleet standards. This will have 15 dedicated bus bays for our 15 routes that serve this area. It'll also have some enhanced passenger amenities, but also it's also going to be a multimodal facility. So what it means is all the rideshare, Uber, Lyft, some of the things that Bonnie was talking about, mobility on demand type services, those will be able to come in so that people can connect into our bus terminal. This is a site plan showing where those connections would occur. I wanted to point out where South Myrtle Avenue is, and that is right here, and Court Street is right here. These are the 2 busiest streets that front this proposed facility. And then we're also adjacent to the Pinellas Trail as well as where CSX's railroad tracks are located. We see that as a great opportunity for people to use their bikes and connect into the terminal through this corner on Franklin and Southeast Avenue. And the City Hall project that I mentioned is right across on the north side, across from Franklin. The purple circle is where you can have all those rideshare connections, PSTA access. They can all connect into the terminal through the pedestrian plaza, and then they can connect into any of our 15 bus bays at this terminal. And then finally, given the South Myrtle Avenue and Court Street connection, this is a very important corner That's the first thing people see when they drive out to downtown Clearwater. If you're going to Clearwater Beach, that's the corner that you see, that's the first thing you see, and that's what the city wants to develop as a public plaza, which we're working with the city staff on to meet their downtown development code. So CSX, as I noted, they have tracks here. Besides the tracks, they also own about 15 foot of right-of-way into our project site, and that's shown in this red box. This is where we are proposing to build that ride-share pickup drop-off area. This is also where the entrance to the employee parking lot will be situated. So for all those uses, we're working with CSX to allow us to build those improvements on their property. And so this license agreement it's a 10-year agreement, and we're going to pay them $80,000 for the full 10 years. That would allow us to build those improvements. I will say that the cost for that license agreement, that's consistent with what CSX charges other municipalities too. So in fact, we looked at what other municipalities are paying for the use of CSX right-of-way in other areas, and it's the same per square footage cost that they're billing us. So it's consistent with that. In terms of the design, CDM Smith is our design firm. They've been engaged in the designs since the very beginning. We are currently at 60% design. We're expected to get the 60% design plans here in the next month. And the entire design is expected to be completed by summer of next year, following which we'll issue a contract for construction of this facility. We're also continuing to coordinate with CSX Transportation because they also have to review and approve the design since we're right on their right-of-way. So that coordination is also being led by CDM Smith, our design firm. And then finally, we're working with various stakeholders, including the city of Clearwater, on the plaza design. We're going to be bringing in an artist to enhance that public plaza area, and then also work with the city on the undergrounding of the power lines that I mentioned. And then FDOT owns a couple of roadways as well, so we're working with them on traffic management as well. Overall, the schedule is designed to be completed by summer of next year, construction beginning in late summer, and we hope that the proposed operations for this facility would be somewhere around late 2026. So that's just our general high-level schedule that we're looking at. I also wanted to bring it to your attention on some future items that will be coming to this committee for your recommendation, including the interlocal agreement with the city of Clearwater. That's for the Duke undergrounding of the power lines. So there'll be a cost-sharing arrangement with the city. We're anticipating that to be around $300,000. The construction agreement with CSX Transportation, this is a required agreement that CSX and any railroad operators required to have with properties that are working on their right-of-way. An artist agreement to enhance that public plaza, that's about $300,000 that we're looking at. And then finally, the project construction contract award, that's valued at $42 million. All of these items, including the two action items that are for your recommendation, they're all within the project budget that we established. So we're not asking for any additional funding for this. We're just asking for your approval on those two contracts for this project. So again, the recommendation is A, license agreement with CSX Transportation for $80,000 for the use of their right-of-way. And this is going to be for 10 years. And then contract amendment with CDM Smith, our design firm, for completing the design for an amount not to exceed $400,000. Mr. Chair and Finance Committee, I'm happy to take any questions from you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Great presentation as always. Any questions from the committee?
I do.
Okay, Matt?
What's the alternative to this license agreement with CSX for the right-of-way?
There is no alternative, unfortunately. That is kind of the nature of doing business since we are right adjacent to CSX. Yeah, the short answer is there's no alternative. We kind of have to use their area for those improvements.
And if I may, these were all previously outlined in the overall scope of the work. Now we're just getting down to approving individual contracts as previously outlined for us.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's nothing new to add to the project, just to clarify for the new members on the committee. Barbara, do you have any questions?
No.
Max, any?
One quick comment. I'll try to keep this real quick. I heard an urban planner use this expression recently that said, good transit needs good land use, and good land use needs good transit. And I want to point out, we've got a real huge potential here. This concentration of transit riders right here, this is more just brainstorming, forgive me if you've already thought of it, but if part of this can be encouraging Clearwater to have some zoning reforms around this terminal that would legalize development that's pedestrian friendly, that could be a major opportunity for a real vital district right there. So many of our bus terminals in the US are just kind of like stuck out in the middle of nowhere, and it's an awful environment, and you don't want to go there and hang out. So just brainstorming there. It could be that we don't have any leverage for something like that, but I see that as an opportunity. Thanks for the presentation.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and that's one of the reasons why we're working with the city
Yeah.
on enhancing this area, particularly Pinellas Trail. We see that as a great potential to make it more vibrant, so that more people can use Pinellas Trail to access this facility, and that could also lead to some more development along Pinellas Trail, kind of like downtown Dunedin does that quite well. The trail being that focus, and you've got so many shops and restaurants all along that. So we definitely see that, share that same vision. And honestly, the city is also looking to revitalize this area as well.
Yeah, great.
Any more questions? Okay. Thank you again. Do I have a motion to approve the contracts?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. On to reports. Ms. Debbie Leos, our CFO, is going to talk to us about quarterly reports.
Before I dive into the quarterlies, I'll let Julie give us an update on September, which is in draft form, so I always say it's a little wonky this time of year.
Sorry, Julie, passed right over you on my
No, fine.
bold red lettered script.
You're fine. She was hoping for that, so don't worry about it.
I don't have an agenda in front of me, so I didn't know, so you're fine. Hi, I'm Julie Lupus, Director of Accounting. As Debbie said, these financials that you've got in your packet are draft. September is the 1 month of the year that we hold open longer because we're closing the whole fiscal year. So there are just some things that will come into it later. So if you're looking at our draft September financials, we finished with a 10.5 million net deficit, which was 1.8 million unfavorable to the budgeted deficit. Revenue is 2.4 million unfavorable to budget, driven by state grants being under budget. Expenses are 536,000 favorable to budget, driven by salaries and fringes, which is an area where we really are in draft right now, and you're seeing that on the statements. And then also insurance expense and services expense, as has been typical throughout the last part of this year. Turning to September draft year-to-date financials, we finished with a 2.6 million net surplus, which was 2.6 million favorable to the budgeted surplus, sorry. Revenue is 2.4 million unfavorable to budget, with state grants revenue driving that. And expenses are 5.1 million favorable to budget, with salaries and fringes, services expense, and insurance expense carrying that favorable variance. I'm happy to take any questions you've got.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to that.
Okay. So in your
Quarter.
packet are quarterly reports, and I'm Debbie Leas, the Chief Financial Officer. And we have in here a variety of reports starting with our capital projects. This outlines every single capital project that we're working on, and it's good good reading when you can't fall asleep at night, but each project is very exciting to each project manager. We include in there how it's funded, we have the milestones for the projects and where we're at as it relates to it. Also in the quarterly reports, we have a fuel report. The fuel report, right now, we're actually locking in slightly under budget. And I always leave, and I know Commissioner Reed has heard this before, but I always leave a portion that I don't lock in. I lock in approximately 2/3 of our fuel budget, so I can control the budget, and leave 1/3 unhedged, if you will. That allows me to take the benefit when the market is low, like it is right now. But if I see the fuel prices increasing, I have the flexibility of locking in more fuel to help contain the budget. So we've got the fuel report in there. We also have an investment report and a reserves report. So the investments report tells us how much money we have in the bank at the end of September. And then what to me is important is how, and we've done a great job of getting some great investment income on that. We're very conservative. We just put things into CDs, which are fully collateralized. And we've done better than we anticipated this year in relationship to that. What I find to me is most interesting in this grouping, before we get to health, is the reserves report. Because we often get told, oh, we have, and I've heard that from my union folks, Debbie, you've got a lot of money. And what happens is we come to the end of the year, we actually had no unrestricted reserves, but I did set aside about $13.5 million to cover the expenses at the end of September for October and November. Now, that honestly is more like $20 million that I'm spending in 2 months, but I only have 13.5. So what I do every year is I have to borrow from one of our restricted funds. I borrow from capital reserves, robbing Peter essentially to pay Paul. The reason being is our property taxes don't start coming in until end of November, beginning of December. So I have to be able to pay for that in some way. So I do that, and then as the money starts coming in, I can replenish the capital reserves. Now, the reason I selected capital reserves to pull from is because the capital projects tend to take a little longer period of time. I know what projects are moving, like Abhishek's project or other projects, so I know when I need that money because of all the milestones we have, and I can borrow from it without impacting a project at that moment in time. Otherwise, I'd be taking from our operating reserves. So I just wanted to explain that, and before we go on to the health insurance, are there any questions so far on the financial piece?
I don't have anything. Do you guys have any questions? No? That's it. Thank you.
Well, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm very pleased to be here. I'm Trish Collins. I'm the Director of Human Resources here at PSTA. The very last page of the quarterly report that Debbie just mentioned is an analysis of our health insurance claims. I join this committee meeting once a quarter to just come and provide a little bit of information about that and have any discussion on our claims activity. As a little bit of context, PSTA offers 3 different health insurance plans. We call them the base plan, the buy-up plan, and the high deductible plan. They all cover exactly the same thing. You get all the same services, no matter what plan you belong to. But each one provides a little bit of a different balance between the cost of your monthly premiums and the cost of the services and the co-pays when you use it. Some people prefer to pay more every month and less for their services. Some people prefer vice versa. The report that's in your packet this time is for the entire fiscal year 2024. It covers all 4 quarters of that. And you will see, looking at that report, that all of our plans did increase in their claims costs over the past year. That is a nationwide trend, really is impacting everybody. And one of the largest drivers of that are the much better, much improved, and much more expensive prescription drugs that have entered the market over the last few years. So it's wonderful for folks who now have access to treatments for conditions of all levels of seriousness. but it's also driving the nationwide increase in plan costs and claim costs for pretty much all employers. Despite that, we were really pleased during the summer to lock in a renewal rate of only a 7% increase. That's below the average. And we really worked closely with our partners, the Gearing Group, our insurance broker. They helped us negotiate that very competitive rate, and it led to extremely low and modest increases for both the agency and our employees as we share that cost with them. Throughout the year, we actively promote good health and other things that we hope will contain some of the cost increases. We have wellness challenges promoting movement and weight management. We bring in really engaging speakers throughout the year to provide real workshops on the importance of preventative care and sleep wellness, and even things like financial wellness and stress management. And then promoting other resources that are offered by our carrier, Cigna, things like smoking cessation and diabetes management, and things like that. So we really work to encourage our employees to take advantage of all of those resources, take a proactive approach to managing their own health care, and by doing so, hope to manage our costs as well. I'd be happy to have any discussion that you'd like
Thank you.
on that topic.
Quick question, what is the loss ratio of 93.6% higher than last year at 77? What am I looking at when I see that?
Yeah, that is essentially how much money, how much profit Cigna is getting from us.
Okay.
So how much of our premiums that we pay to them are going right back out the door to the medical providers to pay for the costs
Okay.
that are being used. And what that shows is that they made less profit from us last year than the year prior. More
Okay.
of the money went right back out.
Okay. All right.
The sweet spot on that for the insurance carriers is around 82%.
Okay.
So when it's 77% loss ratio, that helps us to lower the cost of the premium. When you see it at 93%,
More
now we're
expensive.
going to have some challenges.
They use that to justify their,
Okay,
Pay
that's- I
increase
wasn't
to them.
familiar with the
Right.
term, so that makes
Yeah.
sense now. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Does any committee member have any other business before the committee?
No, sir.
Okay, well, then our next meeting is January 22nd on 2025 at 9 a.m., and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
meeting.